We talked about truth the last segment, and this one, we talked about doing my truth and your truth. And the point isn't to like spill our guts. The point is to demonstrate what that looks like for people and how that can help you in therapy, how that can help you in a relationship. And I'm probably going to say more than I've said to most anybody in my life, but now that I know how critical that is and how important that is that people know. The other thing we're doing this for is the red flags that happen in your life and the things that you say need to be dealt with. You can't just be, oh my God. You know what I'm saying? If you're in a relationship with somebody, that's what that means. Like, part of the relationship is helping them, especially if you're in a relationship with somebody who's had traumatic events in their life. The other part of this is helping people realize and understand that if you're in a relationship with somebody that's in a service industry, a firefighter, a police officer, military, those things affect their life, but in turn it affects your life and everybody around you, your family, your friends, sometimes your business. In my case, like, my entire life was affected by it because I didn't address it. I didn't know what the behaviors were. The subconscious is so powerful in how you behave with maybe anger or relationships or infidelity or whatever it is. We'll talk about all those things, but those are definite red flags that need to be questioned. That's not even an opinion, that's a fact.
I think what happens sometimes is some people aren't willing to address the truth within themselves as far as those traumatic events, and I know you're going to talk about this. But what I've seen play out is oftentimes it just comes out as jokes, maybe some innuendos, maybe sarcasm, but it's like a reference to the event, but always in an unhealthy way or in a completely I don't know, not in a owning it kind of way, not like this was real, this really happened, this is a big deal, I understand it. Instead, right. It's like, oh yeah, wow, that was crazy kind of a thing, right. or just like a constant putting it aside.
And the other part of the truth, the other part of the purpose of this is, and we're prefacing this so it's not, we don't want it to be weird, right? But it's a story. I've had a great life. I'm super fortunate. I'm super grateful. And I'm very happy right now. And there's no but. It's just the story and the information is critical, right? And the story and the information is critical to healing. The story and the information is critical to health, both mental and physical. Mm-hmm. So let's just go into it. And so we're sitting here. We're going to help each other get through this, right? Because some of it is probably going to be emotional. I'm not sure yet. I don't even know what I'm going to say. But we'll just help each other through it as we go. So I'll do mine first, and then whenever you're ready, you can do yours. We'll do a separate session or whatnot. But
a couple weeks.
Yeah, a couple weeks or whatever. And maybe we'll just postpone this whole thing and we'll wait till next year.
Yep.
But anyway, so and then the other part of this too is I'm sort of like delaying. I'm deflecting right now. The other part of this is that when you listen to the story, I think it's going to resonate with some people. I think it's going to unravel some of their shit. Not their shit, some of their stuff, some of their trauma they didn't really maybe realize was trauma. Because a lot of the stuff that happens in life, it's impactful, but you don't even really realize it. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's imperative that you are truthful about how you feel and how you're doing and all those things, because it helps you practice, right? Like, hey, how are you doing today? And you actually tell the truth how you're doing. Like, that's a practice for a healthy life, a healthy relationship, right?
It takes awareness.
Yeah. And a lot of the reason why I never told the whole truth is because I was protecting my self-image, because I was trying to be somebody that I really wasn't. And that's the key. Like, that's the most powerful thing we talk about, is when you finally do acknowledge who you really are and how you got to where you are, that's a whole nother level. Then nobody can...
That's why you're happy.
Yeah, like nobody can screw with you. Right. Now I know, right? So anyways, when I was a kid... Here's another thing too. This is the funny thing is when when I first started counseling, the counselor, she was like, "Oh, let's talk about your childhood," and I was like, "Who gives a f?" But it actually matters. It totally matters, and I didn't realize how much it mattered until the end. Right?
It's the origin.
It's like the total origin.
Undeniable origin.
It's amazing. Yeah. So I'm a little kid, and I was a latchkey kid. So
I bet you were cute.
Duh. But anyway, so. I'm sitting there on the floor every day before kindergarten, and I remember that when Speed Racer was over, that's when I got up and went to school. So I'd walk myself to school, I'd do my thing, and I don't remember what my parents did. And by the way, here's the other, I guess, scary, horrible thing about truth is I would have a hard time saying this if my mom was still alive, because I think it would freak her out. It'd make her feel guilty. You know what I mean? So, but it's also the truth
Well,
that needs to be dealt
parents
with,
want to
right?
protect kids. Kids also want to protect parents.
Sure. And this wasn't like trauma. This is like kind of like a background to what's going on. And by the way, there's no excuses. My actions are my actions. That's like my disclaimer. So I'm this kid, latchkey kid, speed racer comes on, I go to school, right? So all the things that happened in school, when I came home, there was nobody there either, because my sister was 10 years older than me. And when I came home, it was kind of like if I got in a fight or there was like an issue at school or whatever, I sort of handled it. It was my deal, right? Yeah. Which really built this base of, I think, security. I know it sounds weird.
Self-care.
But like self-care, and like I had pretty good self-esteem, so I'm like, fuck, I'll just handle it, which I've always done in my life. But it also made me not a loner, but it made me maybe not share as much as I should have shared. You know what I'm saying? Like that communication element, like that safety in a relationship. I think that
a little more detached.
Delayed that. And the reason why I'm telling the story from that is because it was important when we move forward. So I grow up, well, not really grow up, but physically and age I grow up, but not mentally, as we know. So I get to high school. High school's pretty cool. High school's a good deal. I raced motorcycles my whole life, whatever. But when I got into high school, that's when things sort of changed, right? Like my parents would make fun of me because they said I was a mistake. Like my sister was 10 years older than me, and they're all like Italian and German. My dad's super tall, full head of hair, big noses, everybody, right? They're all tan. And then I remember when I was 11, I went to this reunion in New Jersey, and I got to meet like a bunch of my cousins, and they took this big picture, right, with everybody in this picture. And I was like, who's that kid? Oh, that's me. Like I didn't look like anyone. So I gave my mom shit later on in life. I'm like, hey mom, when you're on your deathbed, you need to tell me who my real dad is, right?
Tell me about the milkman.
Totally joking though, right? Anyways, so when she died, she didn't tell me. But anyway, so in that, it was kind of one of those things where it was a joke, but it actually bothered me because I was like, was I really a mistake? Like, really?
Well, you knew.
Is that why? And then I started thinking, like, is that why nobody was around? But not in like a woe is me, like I'm gonna sit here and cry on my Wheaties type thing. It was just like
subconsciously we take on the words.
And that parenting element is critical. And I always do that with my son now. Like I always tell him I love him. I always encourage him. I always tell him he's amazing. All those things just to make sure like he would never think that, right? It's like overcompensating kind of. So as we move forward through that, I'm in high school. We're racing motorcycles. Primarily me and my dad are going back and forth to California. And in Arizona, I was like really good. But we go to California, it was a new track, way faster riders, right? And I was riding 80, so I don't know, I was 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there. Couldn't drive yet, so my pops was still driving me. And it was funny because like here I would win and we go to California and I wouldn't do that good. I get like 9th, 10th, 15th, and you get pissed. Like, what the fuck are we doing this for? You suck, da-da-da-da. I'm like, dude, it's a brand new track. And it became like this dynamic where we'd drive there, and then when we got there, it was like a shit show. Right? Because we didn't get there in time to practice really. I'd get to ride like a couple laps of the track and I'd be racing on it with the guys.
I'm sure you probably started to feel it on the way over too.
Kinda. It was sort of like a stress and it became not fun. Right. But the preparation was cool and I got to spend a bunch of time with my dad, but it wasn't really a healthy exchange per se. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling this for the reason of that wasn't about me, that was about my dad. Mm-hmm. Right? And when I see, even like when I go to the motocross track now, I see that interaction with like a parent and a child, and I'm like, man, that sucks, because that's not healthy. That's not about the kid. And even if they are good, and even if they are fast, that's not like a really good way to help somebody develop, right? As a person, or as an athlete, right? Yeah. I just don't believe in that.
It's supposed to be there because it brings them joy.
Yeah, and the thing is like I realize that most people that are like that didn't do any competitive sports, right? They think it's just so easy. They don't realize like the pressure on the line and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like when you're lined up with a bunch of guys racing a dirt bike and you're 11 and you're holding the gas wide open waiting for the gate to drop, like that's a big deal. And then you're like riding a track you barely know and there's people all over and there's, whatever. It's a pretty big deal, like any sport is, right? like football or baseball or BMX or whatever you're doing, it's still a big deal. So that compassion wasn't there, is I guess what I'm saying. So we're going back and forth California, and I remember one day I come home from school, and my dad's sitting in a chair and he's crying. And I've never seen anybody, I never saw like my dad ever cry. And he told me that my mom cheated on him with this guy down the street.
How old were you?
I was about that same age. I think I was a little bit older now. Now I'm like 14 or 15. I can't totally remember the timeline for some reason. So he tells me that. He's super upset. He's crying. And then it became like this, not a blame game, but I think like a subconscious blame game. Like this happened because we were racing and you sucked kind of thing.
This is in the same conversation?
This is not in the same conversation, but like this is my head working, right?
Oh.
Like I'm a mistake. My mom cheated on my dad because we're always in California. I'm not performing the way my dad wants me to perform. It kind of like, I was like, fuck, you know? And I kind of felt, I think I felt guilty.
Responsible.
I felt like a little bit of shame, a little bit of guilt.
A little bit of responsibility.
And then, so I come home one day from school, and my dad is sitting at the kitchen table, and there's a gun on the table, and it smelled like smoke. It smelled like gunpowder. And he was going to blow his head off in the kitchen, but he chickened out and he shot a hole in the ceiling. And I was like, I remember I walked in, I was like, fuck. And I didn't know what to do. I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep going. And I went in my room and did my thing, and then I went and ran and got ready and blah, blah, blah.
Oh my
and my parents ended up, you know.
And you're a teenager.
Oh, yeah. I was like 13, 14, whatever. And then shortly after that, you know, they're trying to repair their marriage, and they sent me off to live with this guy, Bobby, and his wife. And Bobby was an amazing motocross rider. This guy's phenomenal. And they basically like took me away and they sent me to like boarding school with this guy, and I worked in his warehouse, and I still couldn't drive yet, but we'd go ride every day, we'd run every day, and I got like
And
pretty
the purpose
good.
was you were a distraction, or?
I think so. I think it was because my dad and my mom really wanted to work on their relationship without me there, because it was pretty toxic.
Okay.
So they sent me off to live with Bobby, and I actually, that was one of the healthier things in my childhood, because they really took me on like kind of almost as their own kid, you know? It was cool. Like we'd get up in the morning and run, I'd run with Bob, and then we'd go work on, you know, we'd go to work for his business. He had like a distributing company for motorcycles. It was really cool. It was called USA Sport. It was really neat. And a really great guy, and I still see him too. They're super amazing people.
Sounds like a good mentor.
Yeah, really good, just a really good guy. He taught me like this work ethic that I'd never really realized, you know. But we go ride every day, and then we'd, you know, he was way better than me. But he would like teach me and like promote that growth, you know, but not in like a hardcore way. And like, hey man, if you do this, it's going to work. If you do this, blah, blah, blah.
Lead by example.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a really good guy. So anyway, so that 3 months goes by. And after that 3 months was over, that summer's over, I'm back in school now. I'm still not able to drive yet. And I remember like I still wanted to work with him. So I'd ride my bike from Granite Reef. It was Granite Reef and McDowell all the way to Van Buren and 43rd Avenue, where his warehouse was. I'd ride my BMX bike. It was like 20-something miles. Wow. And I did that a lot. And then my dad found out and he got pissed, right? Because he's like, dude, you can't be doing that. You can't be riding your BMX bike. Because I'd be coming home like after dark riding down Van Buren. And Van Buren in Arizona, for people who don't know, was like not a good street, right? So
A little shady.
So anyway, so I was doing that. I was going to school. I was still riding my dirt bike. I was still running every day and all this stuff. Like fitness was always a huge deal to me, right? And to like racing, like you have to be fit to be able to do that, right? To be able to perform as an athlete. So as everybody knows, that was like, whatever. I don't even know why I said that. So I come home. My dad's moving out, and he's gonna go get an apartment. He's gonna whatever. My sister's gone, right? Because she's already 10 years older, so she's in college or something. And so now it's just kind of me and my mom. My dad left. They're working on the divorce. It's freaking volatile. And I come home one day from school, and this went on like back and forth for a little while. And I was kind of racing, but kind of not. They were kind of around, but kind of not. It was just like kind of like this weird kind of gray area black time.
Limbo?
Yeah. So I come home from school one day, and now I'm driving. Now I'm like in the workplace. I didn't do a lot of sports in school because I really kind of couldn't, you know. I come home, and my mom is like not around, but her car's in the driveway. And I'm like, Mom, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And I find her, and she's in there. She's in bed, drunk out of her mind, like totally freaking hammered. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I pick her up out of bed, and I turn on the shower, and I'm like, dude, get your shit together. And I put her in the shower.
You're how old?
I'm like 16, 17 now. Put her in the shower, and I go down the street, and there's this gal, I forget what her name was. something Estes. But anyways, and I had friends that I was going to school with, and their mom was single. So I went down the street, and I'm like, hey, my mom needs help. Like, my mom needs to get out. They're getting divorced. Like, you need to help. So they made friends, and they were friends even before she died. Really great lady, super great lady. But then I'm like, all right, fuck this, I'm out. So I was graduating high school. I was applying to the fire department. Like, I knew I had to get out. Like, this was not going to be good, right? So I picked the fire department of all things to do, and which is great. I didn't mean it like that, but
No,
you know
I
what I'm saying? Like,
I
with all
understand.
the kind of the trauma, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I know the story, so I understand.
But I was thinking, like, okay, my dad tried to commit suicide, so like I can make a difference. You know what I mean? And then people were getting hurt racing. When I was 16, I broke my leg really bad, and the fire department came to pick me up. And I remember this gal, Sandy Nygaard, was one of the people. She was I think she was a lieutenant on the truck. Anyways, they came to pick me up. They were so cool. Like, they were so dialed in, and I was like, wow, these people are really, really neat, you know? And I went to the fire station after to say thank you, and that's kind of what got me into that. And my cousin's husband, whatever he would be, he was a firefighter in Tucson, and that's kind of like what got me into the thing, you know? So that's put an idea in my head. Anyway, so this happens. I'm applying to the fire department. I'm like, fuck this, I'm out. So I move out, and I live in a house with...
At 17.
Yeah, I live in a house with a cop, a fireman, and this girl. And I had like this basement bedroom, right? And I got hired on the fire department. And the crazy part of this is the reason why I went through all that is because of this. So my very first fucking call ever was an 11-year-old girl named Jennifer. She got hit by an RX-7 on Hayden Road and Jackrabbit. And her sister stood on the corner and watched while she got killed. So we get there on the ladder truck, and I remember everybody's name there, and I won't say their names, but I remember everybody. I remember everything to a T now. So the first time I ever did CPR, I'm pushing on her chest, and every time I pushed on her chest, her brains would come out of her ears. It was fucking gnarly, like super gnarly. And this was before I went to the academy, and the reason why I can talk about this is because of EMDR. Like, when I told this story in EMDR, dude, I was messed up. I couldn't move. I was on the floor like crying, and I didn't realize how bad that was, right? So that happened, and I didn't have anybody to talk to. And this guy from the fire department calls me, and he goes, hey, are you okay? And I was like, I don't know, no. Because every time I drive to a stoplight, I'd freaking cry. Every time, sorry. This is the part that's tough for people, right? Like, the story and the trauma almost seems normal to me now, but it's not normal.
No,
right?
It's the EMDR that got you to a place where you
Right?
can talk about it.
But so here's another point, is that sometimes when you tell your story, it's trauma for somebody else. Like, you have an emotion to that. And it's difficult to talk. And this is a good thing, like, I'm sorry you're upset.
No, don't be sorry. It's
but
fine.
this is an example of, like,
Listen to me, it's fine.
somebody in a relationship or in a marriage or whatever, just telling a family member, like, sometimes they don't want to share because it's gnarly shit. Like, that's freaking screwed up. I didn't tell it for the graphic effect.
No.
I told it because that was like the
It's
first thing that I realized, like, I was alone.
It's a big piece of what happened.
Yeah. And I really, really felt alone. And I felt alone because I knew I couldn't talk to my dad, and I knew I couldn't talk to my mom. So I was like, shit, who do I trust? Like, my sister was like in art school in California. She was really a great lady, by the way. But anyways, so this guy calls me, and he called me, and he's like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. But I was crying even when he called me. And I just didn't have the tools to say, like, fuck no, I don't want to do this job. That was what I was thinking.
Was it somebody you worked with?
Yeah, he was a captain on the fire department. He was a really good guy. But he checked on me, but I didn't have the tools for that. And I also didn't want to...
So you weren't truthful?
No, I wasn't truthful at all. No, I totally lied out my ass. And when that happened, I was, number one, I was scared to say anything because I thought it would affect my career. But I was also scared to say anything because I didn't have the tools. Like, I didn't know even what to say because I was still processing, like, what in the flip just happened?
Yeah, you're in shock.
That was crazy. Yeah. The other thing that's interesting, too, is that was so subconscious that I didn't even remember the details of that call until I did EMDR, until I went through all that counseling. So we go through the fire department. I was very successful. I'm not being cocky, but I was really good at that job. I became a paramedic young. I think I was like 20 years old or 21. I was a paramedic. And then I started promoting through the fire department. And, Brian Willingham was in here the other day, and I was 24. I just made lieutenant, which was way too young looking back. And I started that fire academy, and that's when I was dealing with all that, like interviewing people and, building the team and all that. And it was amazing. There was so many great things that happened. There's also so many traumatic things that happened, like me and my buddy Todd. I think he was 21. I was 18 or 19 now. And we're running on this truck that was so busy. We'd like literally put our gear on the truck and run all day and all night on EMS calls and fire, and then come back in the morning. And the only time we'd ever stop is like to get a bite to eat really quick or to get fuel. It was 24 hours.
Wow.
And it was insane. And I just remember like all these calls that were just crazy, crazy shit. But it wasn't like one or two. It was one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. So then I get my paramedic, and you spend some time on an ambulance, then you go back on the fire truck. And when I went back on the fire truck, I was by myself. Like my precepting time, like when they teach you, like, okay, you got out of school now, and we're gonna teach you how to do stuff, and so you're not doing stupid shit. And I swear to God, the first like 22 calls I went on, they all died. And I was like, shit, that was impactful. They would have died anyways, right? Like, we're not gonna change the path of the universe, but it was so impactful that I just remember this one lady got hit by a car, and I couldn't get a line on her. I couldn't get an IV, whatever. I couldn't get her intubated, a tube in her throat, into her lungs. Like, nothing worked. We barely got her on the board, and we C-spined her. We taped her to the board. She got hit by a car. She's not breathing, no pulse. Like, it's a freaking shit show. So we bring her to the ER, and there's this doctor there who ended up being my medical director for the paramedic class that I was teaching. Amazing guy. And I bring him in, and he's like, Freymuller, she should have called a fucking taxi. That's exactly what he said when I brought her in the trauma room. And I'm like, fuck, she probably should have, because we didn't do anything. And then I was like, I kind of got mad. Like, he pissed me off. I'm like, well, then fucking teach me. And he did. And that was my mentor for that.
Wow.
And I had mentors in the fire service for, being a firefighter. I had mentors for, I had some really amazing mentors for leadership. And people would always help me and promote me. And that kind of became my family. And some of it was healthy and some of it wasn't. The healthy part was like the work part. The unhealthy part was the relationship part. People were cheating. People were, that was like a normal thing, right? But nobody ever had the tools to say, hey, there's an issue here. Like, this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this, And when I very first started, I think when I very first started, like, you could have beers. I think you'd have beers. I remember them being able to drink beer, like just a couple a day or whatever, which, can you imagine? It was like a frat house.
Right.
And there was like porno mags and stuff in the bathroom, and I'm this young kid, and I'm like, all right, it's cool.
Like,
Like, I'm cool. Because I didn't go to college, right? I was going to community college while I was being a firefighter. So anyways, that's an important part of the story because, number one, I was young. I had this like almost, I don't know psychology-wise, but it seemed like a developmental mind, right? Like, I wasn't fully mature yet. And I had all this input of death and destruction and all this stuff. And this isn't like a woe is me story. This is a story about just like if somebody went to war or whatever, I'm sure it was way even worse than that, right? But the other aspect of this is in the fire service, you get woken up from a dead sleep and you go see something in 4 minutes that's gnarly, that you don't really plan for. And you're not even really awake yet, So I have a girlfriend at the time. She gets pregnant, has a miscarriage. It's gnarly. She's a great girl. I actually married her. I think you met her at the Halloween party.
I did.
Anyways, she's a really great girl. And so that happens, and her parents, and it was kind of just me by myself now. Everybody's like, nobody really said anything about it. Nobody ever like did anything about that. So that was another check mark, kind of got swept under the rug type of thing. And I know that still bothers her. I know that's a big traumatic event. I can't imagine for a female, that's huge, right? But it never got dealt with. So, we're going through, and I end up marrying her, and we're pretty successful. Like, we're, doing well. But the relationship was kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like, it was never like a good relationship because we didn't really have a good example of what that looked like. And I didn't have a good example at the fire department. And it's not an excuse. Because if you choose, you can do it, right?
Right.
I just didn't choose.
Well, you either have to have the example or the tools.
Right. And I had neither. So and it's no fault of anybody. And again, I'm not making an excuse, but that didn't end up working out. And then I went on this kind of like mission of who the fuck am I? Like, I'm racing dirt bikes. I'm a firefighter. I think I was a lieutenant or a captain then. I was like 25 or 26. I was a captain when I was 26. Can you imagine being a captain at a fire station when you're 26? Like, what in the...
Yes, that's a lot of responsibility
It's
for
a
a
lot of
young
responsibility
mind.
for 26, right? So, but I'm doing well. Like, I have my shit together. For a 26-year-old, I'm pretty dialed in. But I never really partied or nothing, so I went right from high school to, the fire service, so I didn't really have time. And when I was off, I was so freaking tired, I slept the whole time anyways. So, as we fast forward through this, the trauma continues, and the calls continue, and there's never any counseling, there's never any discussion on it, really. I mean, we might go have a beer, me and a buddy, and we'd talk about, holy fuck, remember that? Like, that kid's shoes stayed there after he got hit by the car.
Right.
But it was almost like a joke.
Yeah, it was
right?
factual, not emotional.
Yeah. I almost got killed a couple times in fires, like literally almost got killed. Like, I was in a flash and the straps of my SCBA burned off my body, and I got blown back. Like, it was crazy. I did crazy stuff. I don't know how the fuck I'm alive. But in that, I was almost like starting to build this guilt, and I was starting to build this like shame, and I didn't know it. This is subconscious. And I remember now, I'm still racing. My dad's out of the picture, and I'm getting better and better. And I got better and better because now when I'm on the line, lined up with all these guys, I'm like, I want to fucking die. I don't give a shit. And I just go. And it took all
She
the
had
pressure
nothing to
away.
lose.
I felt like I had nothing to lose. But in my head, I'm thinking, I'm rationalizing that thought, that super unhealthy thought by like, okay, now I can go fast. And I don't really have to worry about like jumping a double because I don't give a fuck anymore. And I got pretty good. Not like, I had all of the work ethic and pretty much no talent, which is kind of funny, right? But I was good enough to like hang, So that became kind of like my mantra. Like, I would just do crazy shit, And it was almost to like hold back or manage that pain of death and destruction. And it became incredibly unhealthy because then my relationships were very like transient, I guess I would say. Like, they weren't deep. They were really shallow.
Surface. Mm-hmm.
And so here's the next thing that happened. So then, I had some broken bones in my life and whatever. And I remember I'm driving down the road, and I was on a trunk company then. And I'm talking to the engineer, and I won't say his name, but he's a really great guy. His name is Don. I'll just say his first name. He's a great dude, just an amazing guy. Father of 4. He's a good dude. He's like one of my best friends in the fire service. And I look over, I'm like, hey, Don, here's what I'm going to do. I go, I'm going to meet a school teacher that has fake tits, short hair, and glasses. I swear to God, 2 weeks later, boom. And all I want to do is have fun.
Manifest.
And that was her. We had a blast. So this is my second wife now. We had a freaking blast. We had so much fun. We were out partying all the time. We drink our brains out. But it was super shallow, right? Like, there was never any depth. Mm-hmm. And her father got shot in the head and killed, along with his girlfriend that got shot in the head and killed by her ex-husband. And her brother died like the week before his wedding. That's why my son's name is Nathan, because that's her brother's name, Nathan.
Wow.
So she has this trauma. I have a whole bunch of trauma. Neither one of us want to deal with shit. So we're just having a blast, right? Mm-hmm. So really, we're living like this totally fake life based on lies. Mm-hmm. Neither one of us are truthful. We were in love. We had each other's back for sure, but it wasn't like a real love. It was like this shallow kind of, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I'm saying all this stuff because the healthy part of it and the discussion should have happened, because as I moved on in life, it gets worse. Like, this doesn't get better. And not dealing with your shit, that I won't say a lie, but not knowing your truth, it doesn't go away. It keeps following you, right? So now we end up getting married, had a great wedding. It was super fun with some great friends. We have a child, and that changed everything, right? Like it does for everybody. And it changed so much in that it wasn't like playtime anymore. Now it was serious. But it was also, it changed in that, but Nathan became more of like her partner than me, and that intimacy was between her and the child, and now I'm like totally alone again. And I was like, fuck, this sucks, you know? So I break my leg. I think I broke my leg before we had a kid. I break my leg really, really bad. Messes me up. I'm off work for like 6 or 7 months or whatever. And then a year after that, I break both my legs and my heel
Oh my God.
racing dirt bikes. Somewhere in there, a guy on the SWAT team gets killed at the motorcycle track, and I was there. My best friend Jimmy, which is Nathan's middle name, James, blows his head off, and me and my friend go and find him. And then I go and tell his family because the police department couldn't figure their shit out. So I went and knocked on their door at 2 a.m. and did that, right? Thinking like I'm this firefighter, right? Like I'm this guy that has his shit together and I can do all this stuff. So this is all kind of going on at the same time. And the marriage it's starting to get unhealthy because now we're not sure how to manage this dynamic, you know? And we keep moving down this path of I won't say lies, but not transparency, not truth. We're not dealing with anything. I'm not dealing with anything. And we move forward to a point where, like, subconsciously, I wanted to fucking die. Like, I wanted to die. I was done. I just didn't give a fuck anymore. But at the same time, I'm super successful, right? So I break both my legs, both my ankles and my heel. I'm on crutches. And I was out long enough to where the fire department and the city, I won't say the city but the city people were there, and we're all in this room. And I'm in there on crutches. I was wearing a suit, and they were talking about like what I could do and where I could go with my career. And I had a company going on the side, like most firefighters do. And I remember saying, I was just like, I'm done. And I got up and I crutched out of there. Nobody said a word.
Did you plan on that?
No.
Or was that just like
I was just like, I'm
spontaneous?
done. I can't do it. I'm
Wow.
done. I was just like done.
Just
Something in my
feeling
mind just
in
clicked.
the moment.
I was fucking done. So I leave. Right about that same time, my sister dies of a brain tumor. My grandmother dies. Now my mom's really a mess. She's really disconnected. Never talks about it ever.
Right.
And I leave the fire department. I go to another career as like kind of a consultant type thing. And I was in a spot in my life at that point where, like, when I left, you talk about a red flag. If I saw somebody act like that now, I'd be like, dude, wait a second. Let's wait a couple weeks. Let's like go see somebody. Let's talk. Because I just walked away from almost, I think it was about 19 years of service, like a great career. I just walked away from it. See ya. Fucking done. And I'm not, there's no blame to anything. The purpose of this is like all these things that are happening aren't things that can be swept under the rug, right? So I go to work. I have a business going. I go to work with some people that I wouldn't be in business with normally, but I didn't really care. And then I had this like shame and this self-esteem that was really low, and it was from all of that death and destruction, right?
Carrying all of it, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm carrying all this shit. I feel by myself. Me and my ex are, you know, when the marriage kind of, the intimacy is going away and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I knew this girl from high school, and anyway, long story short, we end up having this affair, and we were all friends. And we end up having sex in the living room while my wife is in the bathroom puking. And that's when I started counseling, because I felt so guilty. I felt like so messed up, but I couldn't tell the truth. And I wish I would have told the truth then, because I was actually in love with her. I fell in love with this other girl. And I didn't try to, it just happened. We just had that connection.
Yeah.
Right? So that progresses on. We're lying to everybody. She's in the process of divorce. Her husband's cheating. I'm in the process of divorce now. This is a shit show.
Yeah.
We have this little boy. She has kids. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, I can actually make a family that I never had. Right? That's like kind of like my subconscious now. And this is from all this counseling I did. I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? Right? So I do this, and I'm moving forward. We're moving forward, and I end up getting divorced. She ends up getting divorced. But in that process, like, we were taking her on vacation with her kids and stuff, and we had this event where we got together while we were on vacation, and it was like the most romantic thing for her. And in my mind, I was like, oh my God, that was crazy. Like, I can't believe we did that, right? And this is all these big red flags. It's not the infidelity. It's if I would have been truthful, I'd have been like, babe, I'm starting to have feelings for this friend. Like, we shouldn't probably have her over. Mm-hmm. And I cheated on you with her. Mm-hmm. That would have blown up huge. But here's the thing. It blew up anyway.
It blew up anyway. It's
'Cause
just,
people
it might have
knew-
been a different path.
Right. It blew up anyways. So now we're both divorced. Now we're dating, and we're trying to build a relationship based on lies. And this relationship is so, I won't say it's unhealthy. It wasn't like, I thought it was love because I didn't know really what was going on. But it's all based on the shame and the low self-esteem. I didn't have good boundaries. I surely wasn't a good partner. Neither was she. Because we started on this really messed up thing, right? We both had
started
infidelity
on lies,
issues. We
yeah.
started on lies. And I know we weren't truthful beyond. And that developed into this relationship where I'd stick my head out of the sand and I'd be like, holy shit, this isn't right. Like, maybe we shouldn't do this. And I did that one time, and then she slept with one of my friends who was married and told me about it. And now I'm like, fuck. Now I'm like really fucked up. I feel abandoned. I feel like messed up. So I go back. And we keep going, and we'd break up and get back together, break up, get back together. And I remember, like, I never felt respected. I never felt valued. I was looking for family. Like, I was in love. And I think at the time, I don't know what she was thinking, but I was in love, and I was trying to build something based on lies. Like, I wasn't truthful with anything, right? She wasn't being truthful with me.
What was the feeling you were looking for?
Like inclusion.
Did you get it?
Being important.
Did you ever get it?
No, because that relationship, however it was manifested, whether it was purposeful or not, is the same relationship I have with my dad.
Okay.
Like, there was no, right? And you learn this in counseling.
Yes.
Like, you repeat that same thing. Same thing with my, the mother of my child. That's the same thing. So, and we'll talk about that, because yesterday was gnarly. Like, yesterday freaking blew me up. And it's important to talk about, because this is something that would help so many people, and that's why I was so upset. Right? So.
I was just trying to connect it back.
Yeah. Well, you did a good job.
Because people need to hear
yeah, it's gnarly.
where it starts.
So yesterday, my ex brings my son over to pick up his PlayStation or whatever, and I walk out there, and she's wearing a ring, by the way, so she's engaged or whatever. And I was super happy for him. Like, that's really cool. I'm happy for you, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, I'm going to be telling my truth today, and I'm going to be telling details that you probably didn't know the detail. She knew I was cheating on her, and she knew who. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows. Everybody knew. We should have just said, but we didn't. And that created this shit show for a long time, and it paid back not only in life, but in karma and every other way. It hurt us both. And if we would have met and started a relationship, we'd probably be together forever, but there's no way. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know, whatever, that's stupid to say, but whatever. So.
The good news is you understand it's your shit show.
Right, it's my shit show.
But you don't need a sequel.
Right, yeah, I definitely don't need a sequel. So I'm talking to my ex yesterday. This is fucking yesterday. And she goes, yeah, when you broke your leg, remember when you were trying to get off meds? Because I was on all these meds. I was on fentanyl, I was on oxycodone, I was on all this stuff. I was going to a pain doctor. I didn't even know there was a pain doctor. And they were giving me all these meds, and I was like, dude, I can't function on this shit. Mm-hmm. Like, I have a business going. Mm-hmm. I can't do this, right? And he's like, oh, we're going to have to wean you off. It's going to take a month. I'm like, fuck that. So I went home. Me and my wife at the time, we drive up north, and I lay there on the floor for 4 days sweating and shivering, and I went through, I'm done. I'm not fucking doing this anymore. I'm not taking any more pills. And pain pills still freak me out. So in that process, I talked about all this gnarly shit that happened in the fire department. And she never told me. So I told her about all these kids that died, and I told her about all this stuff, and she said she had nightmares for a year after I told her. And I was out of it. I was in this state of semi-consciousness, not consciousness, sort of almost like a hypnotic state or whatever, because I was really sick. Mm-hmm. And I was crying, and I was telling her all these things and whatever, and yesterday she's like, I totally knew you were screwed up. She goes, because when you were detoxing, you told me all kinds of horrible, horrible stories that gave me nightmares. And I was like, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you do something? And I walked away. I had my shit together. And I went inside and I cried, big time cried. Because I was like, God, I wish I would have known that then. I wish somebody would have helped me then. I wish she would have taken action then.
This was how long ago?
Fuck, I don't even remember. It was a long time ago. It was I don't know, 2004 maybe or something like that, 2006. Wow. And that was such a huge thing for me, because I was like, man, And yesterday I was trying to film that intro, I told you, and I couldn't do it. And that was why. Because I needed to hear that. Like, I needed to know that. Like, that's such a fucking huge red flag.
So 16 years later, you hear the truth.
Yeah. Right? But the whole funny thing about that is 16 years later, she's hearing the truth.
Right.
16 years later, I figure out the fucking truth. Right? So, you know, you can't ever rewind, and there's no blame here, but the purpose of that story, the purpose of the point, is that people tell you they're messed up, and you gotta listen. Like, you can't sweep it under the rug, because 16 years, and it's not hell. Like, I had a ton of fun. I have a great life. I'm super grateful, even though like that shit's in my subconscious, and it would affect like my behavior sometimes and my mood. I didn't even know why, right? Because I didn't know how to unpack it. I didn't have the tools. But I'm still going to counseling, but I'm not doing it in like a regular way. I'm not like really focusing on it because I'm not telling the truth yet, because I don't fucking know what it is. So we go back to this story now. So we kind of like rewind a little bit, and I'm in this relationship with this lady, and we break up, get back together, break up, get back together. And some of it became like really, really toxic. I felt so disrespected and so alone. At the same time, you know, in there before that, 2008 hits, we lose everything. Like, we were doing really, really well. We lost everything. Houses, motorhomes, everything. We were basically bankrupt. So that was going on, and that didn't really get addressed either, right? It was really an interesting time, like all these different things. So now I'm divorced twice. I'm with this girl that was married to my friend that was friends with my ex, and it became like this war between me and my ex, and then Nathan's in the middle. And, you know, with anorexia is a mental illness that people already have, but it manifested in that period of time, and then he develops this anorexia. But he did it for control. As people that understand that disease, it's about control. And he's trying to control the situation, because me and his mom are at war, and rightly so, because she fucking hates me. Like, who wouldn't? Because I did something totally out of character, totally something I shouldn't have done, which is another red flag. Like, okay, first of all, you cheated. Second of all, you're with somebody, like, that needed to be talked about. That's trauma for everybody. But somehow everybody moves forward and we're cool. And then it just keeps manifesting, and there's lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. We ended up living together, then we ended up not living together, and that was a traumatic event when we didn't live together. Police were called.
Oh, the girlfriend?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was bad, and it was, you know, it was probably more my fault. Not probably, it was more my fault in that situation, because I didn't manage a lot of things. And I didn't set good boundaries, and I didn't communicate well, and blah, 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 right? But still, there's two sides, and there's responsibility on both sides. There has to be.
And it takes two people to.
So we move forward a little bit, and we break up, then we get back together, we break up, we get back together, and then it's like just total fucking lies, right? Like, it's the phone thing, it's the, and it just gets more and more and more and more toxic, but nothing's really being addressed. I mean, I know I was in love, but it's still toxic, right? And then it becomes like this sort of trauma bond thing. And I'm still not understanding what the fuck is going on from all the shit that happened before that. And I remember one time I went over, and there's somebody there at the house. Like, she's in lingerie, and I go in there like to make love to her or whatever, and she's like, no, I don't really want to. And I was like, that's weird. Like, why are you wearing lingerie? Oh, I always leave lingerie. I'm like, no. And then I remember I got off the bed, and because I fell asleep for a minute, I got off the bed, and I walked out, I looked down the hall, and she's talking to somebody in the bathroom. And I'm like, fuck. And I just went back to bed.
You stayed?
Yeah, I just went back to bed. I was like, fuck it, I'm cool. Because I didn't want to admit it, right? Like, that's how much trauma was in my head. That's like how much stuff was going on. I wasn't faithful either, but that's how much stuff was going on. Like, it was this total shit show that we needed to sit down and be like, okay, what's the truth? And then that ends in, you know, a not good situation. I think we mentioned it in like another video or whatever. So in this whole entire process, nothing happened. My life didn't change, it didn't get better until I started being truthful. But do you know how fucking hard that is? Do you know how hard it is to say what I just said? And I can't believe I didn't cry. Like, I totally, like yesterday I was bawling.
Processed yesterday.
Yeah, I processed it yesterday, thank God. But I can't believe, I know I processed it because I can talk about it like I did. And the purpose of this show is to identify not only all those red flags, and I told that story not to hurt anybody or woe is me. I told the story because, like, how many conversations should there have been? Like 100, probably?
Probably.
Like, there's so many events there, and in the fire service, like, fuck, who knows how many.
But
right?
through all of it, what I hear is that you were yourself from the beginning. So with your dad, when you walked in and he had the gun, you're like, fuck it, you go to the bedroom. With your mom, you get her in the shower and take care of her, and you're like, fuck it, and I'm out. And then you head to the fire station. And then you're standing there with the crutches, and you're listening to the thing, and they're like, oh, you're going to do this, we have this, we can do this, and this is your new job. And you're like, fuck it, I'm out.
Yeah.
And then you're in the
deal with
marriage
it.
that isn't working, and you say, fuck it, I'm going to cheat. So it's just a series of more of who you were, which is avoiding
Totally
your
avoiding.
truth and owning the situation. Yeah.
Yeah. It was total avoidance, and that's such a good insight, right? But avoiding the truth, right? Because I wanted to have this image, and I wanted to just move forward and be okay.
Right.
Like, I so wanted to be okay.
Right.
But you're never okay until you deal with it. And it's the scary thing, right? And it's the horrible thing. And, like, after I told that story, I'm probably never going to date again anyways. I mean, this guy's fucking nuts. But the cool thing, the cool thing about that is I was still successful financially, business-wise. Like, I still ran a good business. I had a heart of gold. I still wanted to, like, do everything right. I wanted to do everything right. But there's so much shit, like, holding me back. I couldn't.
Do you think that's part of what kept you from facing the truth? Because you were just on autopilot with the other stuff, and you were telling yourself, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. Inside, you're not good, but you're like, no, I can look at me, look at my business. Everything's fine.
Totally.
Yeah.
So then, I'm seeing this counselor, Catherine, and the other part of this is, like, when I'm doing this work at the end, I'm being made fun of. Like, oh, you have these other women in your life? What do you need me for? I'm like, because I fucking need help. Like, I knew I needed help. I just didn't understand, like, what. And the first EMDR session was gnarly, man. It was gnarly. I was bawling my head off. I didn't even know that was in there. And I remembered all these details, like time, place, who was there, patients' names, everything. I remembered, like, my dad. I remembered, my best friend blowing his head off. I remember everything. Like, totally remembered it. And I remembered a whole bunch of calls that I forgot. My ex told me yesterday a bunch of calls I forgot, like crazy stuff. I'm like, oh my God, you had to deal with that? I'm so sorry, right? But in that process, it took that pain from a 10 or a 50 or whatever it was to like a 2. And I remember she was telling me, she's like, hey, what's going to happen is you're not going to be like healed, you're gonna start making different decisions, and you're gonna get healthier and healthier and healthier. And it happened incrementally, and I still made mistakes. I still did dumb things like getting out of that relationship. I didn't do it right? And I didn't communicate well. And probably then I should have sat down and been truthful, but it takes 2, right?
It does.
It takes two people that need to choose, and by then, whatever. Who knows what's going on, because I can't speak for that side, but it's done. And then I start awakening more and more and more and more and more and more, and then we get to here. And the reason why we're here is because I don't want anyone on the planet to feel what I felt for so long. Like, that sucked.
Yes.
So
Living in trauma and pain and not understanding it and just feeling confused about it and alienated and shameful.
and you can't tell the truth.
You
Like,
can't tell
that's
the truth.
fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the drive I have, and a lot of that drive that I had in my life was partly to not mask that, but like soften it, I guess. And now the drive, like, I know this sounds weird, but I'm having parties to benefit local charities, and that fills me up. Because one of the things that I really, really miss.
Why does that sound weird?
Just, I don't know, it sounds cheesy, right? Like, it sounds.
No, not at all.
But what I missed about the fire service was giving back. And my company, I'm trying to build my company, so it's about giving back. It's about community. It's about, because it really makes me feel good. Like, it's more almost about me, right? And then this show is huge. Like, I'm all about this because I know it's going to help.
When you finally learn your truth, you understand what your true values are. So that's being revealed as you're awakening.
Yeah, and I just feel like I can be real, and I can be genuine, and I can share. And but it's still like that. It's not regret. It's not. It's not regret. It's just I wish I would have learned this earlier, which is why we're doing this. And I wish that the people in my life had the tools to ask the questions, which is why we're doing this.
Right.
And I wish that people knew, like, don't be scared to go get help, which is why we're doing this.
Well,
'Cause it fucking-
there's been a stigma around
Yeah.
people who do need help with any kind of mental wellness or emotional issues, especially in more of a male thing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Men are taught to be strong and not need help.
And that's where we get into like that alpha male thing and all that kind of stuff. And that's, thank God, Brian came on here and did what he did,
It's
right?
powerful.
And, but it manifests in so many different ways. Like when you're not truthful, it manifests in so many different ways. And then you realize too, you're like, nobody's fucking perfect. And I'm just going to say the truth all the time because it's not like I don't care. I do care. But I want to be me. I want to be real.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever that means at the end of the day, I'm okay with it, And if somebody wants to ask a question and we can deal with it, then like I want to do it. Like I want to help. I want to give back like I did with the fire service. I was good at that. I want to be good at this. We're going to be good at this. And there's a ton of people supporting it, and there's just in the professional world even, like people are calling now and wanting to support this because this is a good thing. And the funny thing about this is I'm not a mental health professional, but every single mental health professional I talk to says you have to do this because people relate to you way better than they relate to a mental health professional.
Yes, it's real and it connects and the stories connect and they resonate.
Right. And hopefully it helps people unravel.
Right.
So that's the point